how to get things started. So how's everybody doing tonight? I just got some new glasses. Alright, so I wanted to delve into some mental health and explaining what trauma bonds are. So I've been pretty vocal about how I have PTSD, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and then at different periods in my life, I've had anxiety and depression. I'm not currently diagnosed with anxiety and depression, but I've gone undiagnosed since I was a young girl. So there were definitely times where I just had no idea that I had mental health concerns. I was born into trauma, so I think, it's hard to say like when I had PTSD or when I had anxiety and depression, but I definitely remember periods of my life where I definitely had depression and anxiety. So for instance, like when I was dating my first abusive boyfriend, that was in high school. So it kind of started off not healthy. But I don't know if I would classify it as abusive yet. It's hard to explain. So I didn't recognize the red flags or anything like that, even like within myself. Like I definitely had red flags in that relationship as well. But wow, I definitely have like a reflection tonight with the camera through my glasses. These are new glasses, so. But yeah, so I definitely, because I was born into domestic violence and like I witnessed so much violence, I was definitely somebody who experienced red flags as well. Like I have made mistakes in my life, and I've even mentioned that I've had toxic behaviors in my life, and I was just doing what I was shown. So I've had friendships where I definitely could have been a better friend. Or there were times in my life where I was even a bully. And then in this one relationship with my first abusive boyfriend, I felt like I contributed to the abuse. Now I know that it's called reactive abuse. But in that relationship, I just deemed myself abusive. I thought that that's what I was. But now with the education that I have in therapy and everything, I finally understand that I was not abusive. I was reacting to abuse. So in order for you to be an abuser, you have to be the one, especially in domestic violence, like you have to be the one that is the aggressor. Like you are the one that exhibits the power and control. And so there's within a relationship, it could be with a romantic partner, or it could be a friendship, or it could be your family. But between two people, when it's an unhealthy relationship, there's always going to be one person who is exerting the power and control. And so the dominant person that is exerting that power and control will tend, in examples in my life, will tend to have emotional abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse. Those are like the most common. And then it can lead into physical abuse and even sexual abuse. And then there's financial abuse, spiritual abuse. So there's a lot of different types of abuse that could be happening within family, friendships, or romantic partners. So in that first abusive relationship that I experienced, we were young kids, and I was really just like trying to get away from, my abusive family at the time. So I was already exerting a lot of self-sabotage. I had mentioned in my last live that I was very hypersexual. So that was, I already built a reputation for myself where I was just like the girl that would do anything. And so that just I just kind of built on my reputation as being that person. And then when I was in this abusive relationship in high school, we kind of like, it's so hard to explain because the memories that I have are so in pieces. Like I remember specifically with that boyfriend that there was times where I would be driving in my car and he didn't like that I was talking to someone, something was happening. He took my phone and he threw my phone out the window, and then he was so mad he punched my windshield. That was one specific memory that I remember. And then another time, this is in pieces as well, but I lived in this apartment and I was like renting a room, and there were I was like 18. There were other older men. They were like maybe late 20s, early 30s, and they said that I could rent a room in their apartment. And so I lived there, and my abusive boyfriend at the time lived with his mom, and when he would come over, the older guys that I was living with were trying to tell me that they saw red flags in him, and I just didn't want to believe it. I mean, I had a trauma bond with him. Like, I went through trauma, and I had this bond with him. And it's literally like, as the name says, it doesn't have to be domestic violence, a trauma bond. A trauma bond could even be like, this is just coming to my mind, but say someone you know passes away and that person meant so much to you, and then a person that you know who also knew that person is in mourning, and you two like start dating. It's like you connect to the trauma, like you bond over that trauma, and then that's its own trauma bond. So a trauma bond doesn't necessarily have to be a violent trauma. Like, it could be, you can both relate to, and again, it doesn't have to be romantic. So you could have a trauma bond with your own family. So at one point I've had many trauma bonds with my family, but I had one specific trauma bond with my family when I left my family at 18, and I left them for almost 3 years, and then I went back to them. I was like, I have so much guilt and shame, and I can't ever leave them again, and how dare I leave them? And so I was like bonding with them in the trauma of like them not having me in their lives for almost 3 years. And so trauma bonds can be many different things can cause a trauma bond. But for instance, with this first abusive boyfriend, there were a lot of different things that took place in that relationship. I was definitely depressed at the time, but didn't know I was. I definitely had anxiety, but didn't know. I probably had PTSD as well, but again, I didn't know. I was, a big trait that I had is I would become obsessed. And so I was absolutely obsessed with this boyfriend. I was not in love with him, but I believed that I was. I was definitely obsessed. It was not healthy. I think because of having a trauma bond with him, like there were like big moments where, you know, like I left my family. I left my parents on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, for multiple reasons. But I told myself I told myself, you know, I can go be with this boyfriend now. Like, again, I don't know what I was telling myself, but I thought that even though he lived with his mom, I thought like, oh, I'm going to go live with him. And it's like, that's not what ended up happening. I ended up living in a tent. But I was like, okay, I left my family for him. Not really. There were other reasons, but that's why I felt like a deeper connection with him, I guess. Because like big monumental moments, you know, like that was also the same boyfriend where my father walked in on us having intercourse. And I'm unsure if I shared this in a live because I recently just did an interview with someone, and I feel like I could have said that on the interview or maybe on the live. But when I was 17, my boyfriend was 16. I had wanted to have intercourse with him, and at that age, it was either you were going to do it in a car or you were like, you didn't really have a place to, like, you were teenagers, you know. And I had mentioned that I, you know, was initially my first time ever at 15, I was sexually assaulted. So I was already becoming hypersexual. And, you know, my boyfriend at the time, he definitely wanted to do it too. But now, being as educated as I am with what sexual assault is, you know, I was 17, he was 16. And it's like, I do believe he was a consenting person, but I don't know, that like doesn't sit well with me. And I talked to my therapist about it, and I'm like, did I do something wrong? And they explain it as like, no, I didn't. But I'm still trying to like work through that. I mean, he was wanting to do it, but it doesn't sit right with me that I was 17 and he was 16. And like I said, I was very hypersexual. And I remember him being like, we need to go get condoms. And we did. We were so young. And like we went to like a Walgreens in our hometown, and they were looking at us like, what are these two kids doing? Because like we went to go buy condoms, and like it was very nerve-wracking. Even though I was already becoming hypersexual, I still like didn't really know what I was doing. So we ended up getting the condoms and then going back to my parents' house. And I remember being so weird and like calling my dad and being like, so are you at work? Obviously trying to check if like he was not coming home, to see if this was like a go, you know? And so we're starting to have intercourse, and then I was on top and we were on my bed, and my father ended up coming home. And I was like, I don't think that's him, because he said he wasn't coming home. So I don't think that's him. And then my father opens up the bedroom door, and I mean, so now he knows what's going on. Like, he sees me like on top. He sees me like floating under blankets. I mean, what else did he think was happening? I can't really say how I think he should have reacted, because I don't think anybody in this world is really going to know how you're going to react to something, unless you're like in the moment, and even in the moment, you might not know how you're going to respond to something either. So I don't know how I expected my father to react, but the way he reacted doesn't sit well with me, and I'm still talking about it in therapy because, so, my father walks in, he sees me like midair on top of my boyfriend, and I don't know if by the angle he saw my boyfriend laying there, like, I don't know. We didn't really have the conversation, but my father decides to like walk into the bedroom and walks into the bedroom now, and then opens the covers and like looks at like what's happening. So he saw what was happening, and it never sat right with me. Like, here I am, like his youngest daughter. I don't know what he thought was happening when he was standing at the door, but why would he proceed to come in to the bedroom and then open up the covers and then look? And like, he looked for like a solid 5 to 10 seconds, and then I don't remember, I think he just was like, what, and walked out. And again, I don't know how I expected him to respond, but I still don't it still doesn't sit well with me that like he decided to open the covers and look. And then he went into the living room, sat on the couch, and then me and the boyfriend at the time were like, what do we do? This is so awkward. What do we do? And then my boyfriend at the time was like, why did he look? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to be in a lot of trouble right now. And we just like got dressed, and then I came out of my bedroom and I tried to talk to my dad, and my dad was like, this is what you do now? This is who you are? This is what you do now? And I was like, I guess, like, I don't know. And he's like, drive him home now. I'm like, okay. And, yeah, so that kind of became the reason for why my parents didn't want me dating him. And I would tell them a little bit about like how our relationship was, and my parents were, especially my mom, was like, yeah, I don't think it's healthy, which was confusing because like my own parents' marriage wasn't healthy. So I don't know, when I was a teenager, so I was like, I guess it's fine. Like, and I would compare like, well, it's not as bad as my parents' relationship, so I guess it's not that bad. And I don't know, I became like obsessed with that boyfriend. And when my parents told me no, it was like more of a reason for me to say yes and like still date him. So I would lie. I think at one point I told my parents I wasn't dating him. And, he lived, like, if you were leaving my driveway, if you went left, you were going more towards my hometown. And if you went right, it would be going towards out of town, which is, he lived out of town. And I remember like even going through the extremities of when I was leaving, I would take the long way. So I would pretend I was going to like a friend's house, and I would go left, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, she broke up with him. But in actuality, I was actually taking a left and then going around the long way to get to his house. So I lied for a while, like dating him, and yeah, I never broke up with him until years later, when I found out he was cheating on me with like a bunch of different people. That's also like why I stayed off Facebook for like 9 years, because I found out because I don't remember exactly, but I think he either made a different account, or I don't know. I knew his password or something, and there were like messages of a bunch of different girls in there, and I was like, okay. I'm talking like over a dozen. And I think that was just like finally the last straw for me. I don't know. And like he started dating another girl, and while he was dating me, so I think that was like the last of it. And then I came home to my family. So, but I think I was trying to compare which abuse was worse. So I was like, his abuse is pretty bad, but like my parents, the abuse at my family's house is pretty bad too. But like, I don't want to be with this boyfriend anymore because of what he just did. So I guess I'm going to go back to my family. I don't have anybody else. So I just went right back to my family, and then more abuse would happen. But anyway, when I was living with those 3 older guys at that apartment, I was obsessed with that boyfriend, and I was like 18, and I definitely had depression, and it was the very beginning stages of real, like, thinking I might have had depression. Like, I never wanted to hurt myself, but I remember one specific day he was fighting with me and like saying he was going to break up with me, and I like really didn't want him to break up with me. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think I had just gotten out of the shower, and I was like shaving my legs, and then I had a razor, and I remember just like taking the razor and like cutting my arm, and then him being like, "What is your problem?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I need help." And then in the same moment, I don't know when, but at one point, it was the first time he ever punched me in my face. I think he was like saying like, I don't remember exactly, but I do remember that was that was the first time he ever punched me in the face. And then I remember those 3 older guys I was living with being like, "You're both crazy, and you both need to get out of this apartment." And I didn't live with them much longer. Probably just like a couple more weeks before. At that point in my life, I was living in a tent. I went from living in a tent in the winter to living with a friend who said I could live with her and her mom. I lived with that friend, and then was going to move back into the tent. And then that didn't work out. So then I moved in with a different friend. That didn't work out. And then that's when I moved in with those 3 guys. Then I moved in with a coworker. And then after that, I was moving so many times. Like I did not last more than 3 months at a location. And this was all around the time of like 18, 19. So, but that was like the first time that I had ever, my mind had ever started to like play with me, where I was like, no idea why I thought that would be a good idea. And like took a razor and cut my arm. Like, I don't know. That's why I think I had depression at that time. But again, like, I was never diagnosed, but I definitely think I had depression, because that's like one of the signs is like hurting yourself. And then there was one other time, and the one other time was with my children's father. So when I got pregnant with my oldest son, I had never been pregnant before. Again, I mentioned that before finding out I was pregnant, I was addicted to marijuana, like heavily. I got hurt at work and then needed to get help at the hospital because I definitely had a concussion. And when I went to the doctor, that's when they told me that I was pregnant. And I was like maybe 5 or 7 weeks pregnant. They didn't know exactly, but they knew I was early. And that's when I was freaking out, because I'm like, oh no, I'm addicted to marijuana. They're like, well, you need to just everything will be fine. You just need to stop. And I'm like, okay, like I'll stop. And I remember that was the first day of my sobriety, and I've been sober ever since. And it's been over 6 years now. Actually, June 22nd, it was 6 years. So, but that circumstance, I ended up telling my children's father that I was pregnant, and I found out on Father's Day. And so the way that I was very sentimental. So the way I wanted to tell him was to go to CVS and get a Father's Day card and write in the Father's Day card that I was pregnant. I mean, it's a Father's Day card. So, but I did say, like, I mean, I never once thought about ever having an abortion. When they told me I was pregnant, I was like, I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to change my life. Like, I'm going to be sober. Like, it was a gift from God. Like, that is how I felt immediately when they told me I was pregnant. So that was abortion was never something that I was ever going to do. And I remember writing that, like, I could never destroy our beautiful creation that we made together. I wrote that in the Father's Day card. And so when I gave it to him, he was not happy. I think he like threw it, and he was like, you need to kill this baby. And I was just like, okay. And that's when it started. That's when the depression started sinking in again, because here I am pregnant and I'm happy about it. Like, I'm like, even though I knew we had an abusive relationship, I was like, I'm going to be a mother. Like, this is amazing, you know? And when he said, like, you need to kill this baby, like, he didn't even care that I was pregnant. He was just like, this can't happen. And then I was like, no, I'm never going to do that. And it was like an argument. And then I was scared because I didn't want to tell my family. And then he didn't want to tell his family either. So I think we kept it to ourselves for like not even a week, because he ended up telling his mother, because we were having a horrible argument. It became violent. He was hurting me. And in front of his mother. He used to do that all the time. He used to like physically assault me all the time in front of his mother. And she was like, you guys need to just break up. Like, this isn't working. And then I remember him just being like, I can't break up with her. She's 6 weeks pregnant or something. And the mother was like, not okay about that. She even said, you need to get an abortion. And I was like, okay, this is what's happening right now. Like, wow, they really don't want me to be pregnant. So now I'm hearing it from my children's father. Then I'm hearing it from his mom. She could not keep that information to herself. So she ended up, I don't know, calling her daughter, my children's father's sister. And then that information got to the sister. And then, I mean, it just spread like wildfire. Like, then the sister knew, then the two brothers knew. Now all of a sudden, you know, my family still doesn't know. Now all of a sudden, they are like having this whole intervention where they're trying to plan how they're going to force me to get an abortion. And I'm just like, I'm never getting an abortion. I don't know like what you guys are trying to do, but it's not going to happen. So I remember they literally hosted an intervention, and they had the sister. So the sister lived not in the same hometown as the mother. So she lived like a whiles away, like closer to Boston. And she came over with her boyfriend. The brother lived at the house with his mother, so he was there. It was in the basement. My children's father was there, and their mother was there. And they just were like, D'Angelo, you got to come into the basement. And I'm like, okay. They literally hosted an intervention to force me to get an abortion. And so I go down, I'm downstairs in the basement, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, you cannot be a mother. He cannot be a father. And they listed all the reasons as to why he cannot be a father. And I'm like, I hear that. I hear you. but just because he can't be a father does not mean I cannot be a mother. Like, I already am a mother. They told me that I'm having a baby. I'm a mother. Like, I became a mother the second they told me that there was a baby growing inside me. Like, I felt it. When they said I was having a baby, like, congratulations, you're having a baby, I was like, immediate love. Like, I felt like I had a purpose in this world. For the longest time, I did not feel like I had a purpose. I just felt like I was somebody who could get passed around, and I was somebody who would self-sabotage, and I was a joke to the world. Like, that's how I felt. I didn't feel love. And so I finally felt like, wow, this is my reason for living, God. Like, this is what I'm meant to be, a mom. And so the depression was sinking in even more when they were hosting this intervention, being like, you need to get rid of this baby. And I'm like, no, like, what is, everybody was just out to get me. Like, everybody was just like trying to. So I think at one point I got up and I went upstairs and I'm like, no, I gotta get away from these people. And it was right around the time of my sister, who's closest in ages with birthday. So her birthday is tough because she lost a really, really close friend on her birthday. And I had mentioned that we all experienced abuse growing up in that house. And one of the things my sister closest in age with me would always say was, I can't wait till my 18th birthday. I can't wait till my 18th birthday. She said it all the time. And she was saying it because she could finally move out of that house. And she couldn't get away from my family fast enough. So she would say it all the time. I can't wait till my 18th birthday. And then her 18th birthday comes and her best friend dies in a car accident on her birthday. Like, it became my sister's birthday, and then at 2:00 in the morning is when her friend died. And her birthday has never been, her birthday is a time of celebration, but yet she's in mourning. So it's traumatic. So I was trying to tell his family, because his family knew my family through that sister. So I was like, and they didn't know, nobody in my family even knew I had a boyfriend, because my children's father didn't even call me his girlfriend. So, like, we weren't even really dating, but we were, if that makes sense. Because I was, like, living at their house, at the mom's house. But my family had no idea. So I was trying so hard to tell everybody in that family, like, you cannot tell my family. Like, let me tell my family. But please do not tell my family. And obviously they didn't listen. That brother who knew my sister calls my sister on her birthday. So I was so sad, because I'm like, just give my sister her birthday. Like, why did you have to do that? Like, why? Why tell her that? Because I don't know, it's hard to explain, because my sister closest in age with me, we argued when she found out I was pregnant, because she explained to me that she felt like I was doing it out of spite. Like I was dating my children's father out of spite, because I don't know, it's deep, but the friend that passed on my sister's birthday was dating somebody, and it was a pretty significant relationship. They weren't dating at the time of her death, but they were dating for a big chunk of their teenage years. And that person she was dating is my children's father's cousin. So she explained that she felt that I was keeping a reason for us to be linked to this family or something. And when I first started like being friends with my children's father, I had no idea who he was. Like, I did not know that he was cousins with this person. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know until months into hanging out with him that when all of a sudden I saw the cousins at the house, and I was like, oh, you know them? And he's like, those are my cousins. I was like, wow, I had no idea that those were your cousins. But in my sister's perspective, she explained that it felt like I was doing it out of spite, which I was not. I didn't even know, but it's deep for her because, again, it was her best friend and she's in mourning. So now, anyways, they tell my sister on her birthday, and I was just so saddened because it was like, that's not your place. Anyway, now my family is saying I need to have an abortion. So both of my sisters were telling me, you can't be a mother. You can't be a mother. I was 23. My children's father was 21. No, he was 21. And I remember my sisters being like, it's almost like this is a teen mom situation. Like, you're teenagers. You're not mentally capable of being a parent. Like, both of that. I was getting it from both angles. His family, my family. My parents did not say I needed to get an abortion. My mother and my father did not say that. But my sisters did. Both of my sisters were like, you need, and they would not stop telling me. They just kept being like, that's what you need to do, and you need to do it now. You have this amount of time to do it. And I'm like, no. I said no. Like, never will that happen. Then I would get it from his family. And they would like plot together and try to be like, and I heard from it. I was only 6 weeks pregnant. I heard about it the whole first trimester. That's all they kept saying. And they kept being like, you have 1 week to, and I'm like, get out of my head. Like, no, the answer's no. So then once they finally realized, okay, so before that, this is when I knew I had depression, because listening to them, listening to my family and his family consistently tell me that I needed to have an abortion. I'm like, hi. I'm like, no, I will never have an abortion. So stop. But listening to both of them, both sides of the families telling me that that's what needed to happen was literally not okay for my mental health. Like, because it was never going to happen. So listening to them just saying it constantly was causing more depression for my mental state. And at one point I remember being like, I'm never doing that. That's never happening. And I wrote into a journal, and I was writing, I don't know what I was doing. I don't know if I was trying to get my children's father's attention, or because I don't think I was really going to do it. But I was planning on how I was going to hurt myself. And I was writing it in my journal, being like, my family and his family are forcing me to get an abortion, and I'm never going to get an abortion. And so I will die with my baby. And I was like thinking about ways on how I could drive my car into a tree. And I like wrote this all down in the journal and left it for my children's father to see. And then he was like, don't do that. And then he showed his family, and he's like, she's crazy. And I'm like, I need help. Like, you guys can't talk to me like this. And I never got help in that moment. I mean, I definitely had depression, and I definitely needed help. I definitely needed his family and my family to stop trying to force me to get an abortion. So I don't know if in that moment my children's father was finally realized I was never getting an abortion, and then I don't know, a couple weeks went by, my family and his family started to realize that I was never going to get an abortion. And then that's when my sister started saying, well, then put the baby up for adoption. And I was like, what is your problem? No. And I kept being like, can you stop saying the A words? Like, I was like, leave it alone. Like, this is my baby. So then his family was on board being like, yeah, put the baby up for adoption. My family and his family started to like conspire with each other. I remember my sisters reaching out to his sister and like going into my past and being like, she's been super hypersexual. She's stolen. She's lied. She's coming up with all the bad things I've ever done in my life to prove why I can't be a mother. And like, they were like all working together. And then I was like, I'm not putting the baby up for adoption. So like, stop. And then I remember again, specifically my children's father's sister, boyfriend, calling my children's father being like, do miscarriages run in her family? Like, is there, what else can we do here? Because she has all the control. Like, you cannot have this baby. And I was like, wow, I remember listening because he was on the phone while I was in his room. And I heard that boyfriend say, I don't think they were engaged at the time, so I think it was just her boyfriend, but now they're married. But I was just like, wow, this is horrifying. So I think maybe as I was around 4, 5, 6 months pregnant, they finally accepted it. And the sister was like, I remember she sent me an email being like, I've accepted that you're having this baby, so I guess let's prepare. Where are you going to live? What are you going to do? Because I was living with the mother at the time. So it was just, I don't know. Like, now that I'm talking to my therapist, it's like, it makes so much sense as to how I had depression. But again, I don't think I was going to actually drive into the tree, but like, I went through all the efforts of like writing down what I was going to do. And I mean, again, you don't know how somebody should respond to something, but I was here I am like in love with this baby. Like, I'm like, this is my baby and I'm so happy. And then all I hear, I'm getting knocked down by so many people who are supposedly supposed to care about me, telling me, abort the baby, put the baby up for adoption, do miscarriages run in your family? It's like, no, stop. So it's not a shock that one would think of self-harm, I'm not ashamed of it now, but back then I kept that to myself because now I have 3 children and his family and my family have tried to say she is too emotionally unstable to be a parent. And it's like, I am getting help now. So they don't have anything on me. Like, this is my life. These are my stories. This is what has happened to me. And I can own the choices I've made. And I've made mistakes. I'm a human being. As someone who has lost a child, yeah. Yeah. We are so much stronger for our traumas. Yeah, you can message me. I'd be happy to talk with you. Thank you for joining tonight. Yeah, there's just... So trauma bond for so many reasons with my children's father. So many reasons with my children's father. So much trauma. And there was times where he even admitted, like, we've been through so much together. And I'm like, I didn't know it was a trauma bond at the time. He even recognized, like, almost like he needed to stay with me because we had trauma together. And nobody else would be able to understand what we've gone through together. So it's like we needed to be together. Both of us experienced that. And I think with my first abusive boyfriend too, I think we both didn't know how to leave each other because of the trauma bond. Like, trauma bonds are intense. Like, my first boyfriend, he was cheating on me, like, with so many people. But he couldn't leave me. I was being abused by him. And I was finally kind of starting to see the red flags, but I couldn't leave him. Like, that's a trauma bond. My children's father, it's like, he did so many things. So many things. And I couldn't leave him. And my children's father knew he did so many things, but he couldn't leave me. Like, it runs deep. Trauma bonds are intense. So much so, this will be my last thought because I've been on here for almost an hour. But when my children's father was arrested for strangulation and suffocation, he was arrested for that, right? I was lucky to be alive. I survived it. My baby survived it, my youngest. He was immediately arrested. He stayed at the local police department because he was in violation of the no abuse order. So he wasn't allowed to have bail. And it was on like a holiday. So he had to stay like 4 or 5 days at the local police department because he violated the order and couldn't have bail. And they had to, because it was a holiday, they had to wait until Tuesday. I think he got arrested on like a Thursday night. So he had to wait until Tuesday to go to the courthouse to be formally charged. And then so the day that he finally goes to the courthouse, I was already talking to his family. I talked to my family, I talked to his family, and I took full responsibility. I was ready to be like, this is all my fault. I should have never came downstairs. Meanwhile, he's the one who strangled me and suffocated me. But I was taking responsibility. Like, I was like, if I just left him alone, if I just didn't go downstairs, this wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have gotten arrested. I was victim blaming myself. My family, my sister closest in age with me, was also blaming me, victim blaming me, being like, well, which part did you play in this? His mother, his brother, his sister, they're all blaming me, being like, it takes two to tango, D'Angela. Like, what role did you play in this? You should have just left him alone. So I was convinced that I'm the one who got him arrested. Like, I should have just left him alone. So I was so heavily victim blamed that the day that he finally gets to court on Tuesday morning, I sat with his family. I sat on that side of the courthouse. I didn't sit with the victim advocate. I did not sit on the victim side. I sat on his side with his family. Okay? That's how deep a trauma bond is. So I'm sitting on that side with his family. Meanwhile, they're all conspiring, trying to tell me to, like, talk to the district attorney and lessen his charges and try to say that it's not as bad as it was. They tried to get me to, like, change the wording and, like, he didn't really strangle me, you know, he didn't really kick me in the stomach, his feet pushed me, like something ridiculous. The sister actually wrote it out, and, like, it was just, so she actually got charged with witness intimidation. She's still on probation for that, because that's against the law, But I was just such in a trauma bond that I'm like, okay, I'll do anything to, lessen his sentence. I can't believe I went downstairs. And so anyway, I'm sitting on that side. And that's when the judge deems him dangerous. And the whole family loses it on me. They lost it. The sister is the one who really lost it on me. And she just started, like, cursing and being like, you're going down. She was threatening me. And so I had to get a harassment prevention order against her. And then, the courthouse brought charges against her for witness intimidation because they witnessed her. The victim advocate witnessed it. Like, they witnessed her threatening me. But that's how deep a trauma bond is. Like, even the local police department was like, is she really sitting on that side? And I remember when they deemed him dangerous, like the judge was actually proud of me. He even stated on the record, like, for the first time ever, this woman decided that her life and her baby's life was important, and she scratched your back. She tried to fight back for the first time ever. Like, I was just like, wow, I did, yes. And the judge was like, you put her in a situation that she should have never been in, and you are dangerous to yourself, to others, and to the public. And he took the gavel, and we were the last case that day, so it was like 4:30 p.m. There was nobody else in there except the courthouse, his family, me, and the police officer. Hit the gavel, said he was dangerous, and he was serving 120 days with no bail. And this was before his case was even called. This was just for his arrest. So his family lost it on me, blamed me for everything. And I was sad. Like, I remember looking at him being like, I'm so sorry. I look back at it now like it's laughable. Like, why am I apologizing? He strangled me. So the trauma bond is so deep that he ended up getting a lawyer or a public defender, something. A public defender first and then a lawyer. He took it to Superior Court. He got released with a GPS monitor. So he only served about 3 weeks before they let him out. And when he got out, when they let him out, first thing he did was contact me. Me, being in the trauma bond and the cycle, spoke back to him. Stayed in the relationship even after he strangled me and suffocated me. And got arrested and had a GPS monitor and legally wasn't allowed to talk to me. I was jumping through hoops to try to see him still. He was sexually assaulting me still. He got out in October, November, December, January, February. Like 4 months we did that. 4 months we did that. And then finally, on Valentine's Day, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I finally took my life seriously. And I went to the local police and said, he's been talking to me this whole time. And he got arrested. And then he served the rest of his time in jail. So that's how deep a trauma bond runs. Deep. It's deep. So I've been talking for about an hour now. So I'm gonna get off. But if anyone has any questions, like, feel free to email me, message me, you know, if you ever want to know more specific topics. I'm open to that. But yeah, there's so much I want to continue going over. So thanks for coming tonight, guys. Thanks for listening later. And take care. Until next time.